They all mocked the French waitress's accent, until the Mafia boss declared she was gorgeous. Its wooden floorboards creaked under every hurried step, and the air was thick with laughter, argument, and the occasional clatter of a fallen mug. Camille moved quietly among the tables, balancing a tray filled with drinks. Her soft French accent made the patrons pause, sometimes with amusement, sometimes with irritation. "Mais oui, sir," she said politely to a man who frowned at her pronunciation. A group at the next table snickered. "She talks funny," one whispered, nudging his friend. "Do you even understand her?" Camille smiled politely, as always, keeping her composure. She had learned long ago that pride could survive even in a world that mocked her. Her dark hair was pinned neatly, and her green eyes scanned the tavern constantly. She was not just a waitress. She was someone who noticed everything, the whispers, the hidden glances, the movements in the shadows. Her life had been simple and quiet before arriving in this city, a place that promised work and opportunity but gave her little more than ridicule. Still, she carried herself with dignity, even if most could not see beyond her accent. Tonight, however, there was a tension in the air that made the hairs on her arms stand. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a group of men in black coats enter. They moved with purpose, their presence drawing attention without effort. Patrons glanced nervously, some whispered, but none dared speak too loudly. Camille's heart beat faster. She had heard stories of this man, of Lorenzo, the one they called the Shadow King of the city. He was not a man you noticed for his looks, at least not first. It was his presence that demanded attention, the silence that fell when he walked into a room, the way people instinctively stepped aside. But now he was walking toward her, his dark eyes scanning the tavern until they found her. Camille froze for a heartbeat. Every instinct told her to move away, to hide behind the counter, to disappear into the crowd. But curiosity, that stubborn flame inside her, held her in place. "Serve him," one of the men whispered, a subtle nod toward Camille. The moment felt eternal. She approached Lorenzo, bowing her head slightly, her hands steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Good evening," she said softly, her accent curling around the words like smoke. Lorenzo's eyes studied her, and for a moment the tavern seemed to shrink, the laughter and chatter fading into silence. His gaze was intense, almost uncomfortable, as if he could see not just her appearance but the very essence of her spirit. "You," he began, his voice deep and smooth, and then he paused. "You are gorgeous." The words were simple, but they cut through the room like a sharp knife. The patrons froze, their mockery evaporating in a heartbeat. Camille felt her face flush with heat, her stomach twisting in a mix of fear and fascination. "I thank you," she murmured, unsure how else to respond. Lorenzo's eyes did not leave hers. "Do not hide behind politeness," he said quietly. "I want to see who you really are." Camille felt a shiver run down her spine. It was not only the words that unsettled her but the power behind them, the unspoken command in the way he looked at her. There was something dark, almost dangerous in the way he held himself, yet something equally compelling, as if a part of her had been waiting for him without knowing it. Before she could respond, a sudden disturbance broke the moment. A scuffle had erupted at the far end of the tavern. A gang of local thugs had come looking for trouble, and now they were threatening a young merchant. Without thinking, Camille stepped closer, holding her tray defensively. "Please stop," she cried. The men laughed at her, dismissing her as insignificant, just another voice in the room. But Lorenzo's hand moved, quick and silent, and suddenly one of the men was thrown across the floor with a force that made the air crackle. Camille's eyes widened. She had heard tales of his strength, but seeing it was another thing entirely. Lorenzo's gaze returned to her. "Are you always this brave?" he asked softly. Camille swallowed. I cannot just watch them hurt someone," she said honestly. His lips curved into something like a smile, though his eyes remained serious. "Good," he said. "That courage will be useful." The fight ended quickly after that. Lorenzo's presence alone silenced the room, and the thugs retreated into the night, muttering curses. Camille exhaled, trying to steady her shaking hands. "You have a keen sense of danger," Lorenzo remarked as he turned toward her. "That may save your life one day." Camille wanted to say something clever, something that would impress him, but her voice failed her. She nodded instead, unsure if words could ever match the weight of this moment. After the tavern had calmed, Lorenzo motioned for her to follow him. Hesitation flashed in her mind. Who was this man to command her attention so completely? And yet something in her chest urged her forward. The streets outside were slick with rain, reflecting the flickering gas lamps like molten gold. The city felt alive, dangerous, and intoxicating all at once. Camille kept her eyes ahead, but she could feel Lorenzo's gaze lingering on her, assessing, weighing, almost like a predator that might not strike but would always watch. They walked in silence for a while. Camille's thoughts raced. Who was this man, and why had he singled her out? Why did his words feel heavier than the laughter and mockery of the tavern? Finally, he spoke. "Tell me, why are you here in this city, a French girl among thieves and liars?" Camille's voice was soft but steady. "I came to work, to live, to make something of myself." "And have they welcomed you kindly?" he asked, his tone darkly amused. "No," she admitted. "They mock my accent, my ways. They think I do not belong." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed, almost as if he were measuring her soul. "And yet you stand tall." "Yes," Camille said quietly, "I have to, or I would not survive." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Interesting, very interesting." The streets around them seemed to quiet, the city bending around the dark aura he carried. Camille felt a shiver of fear, yes, but also something else, a pull she could not explain, a strange and powerful attraction that made her heart ache with anticipation. "Come with me," he said finally, turning down a narrow alley that led toward a massive, shadowed building at the edge of the city. "I want to see what you can do, to see if your courage matches your words." Camille hesitated. This was dangerous, far more than she had ever imagined. Yet, some deep, instinctual part of her urged her forward. This was not just fear or curiosity. It was the stirrings of something more profound, something that might change her life forever. Inside the building, the halls were grand and dark, filled with shadows that seemed almost alive. Candles flickered along the walls, casting eerie patterns that danced like spirits. Camille's heart pounded as she realized she was not just in the home of a powerful man. She was in the heart of his world, a place where danger and power intertwined. "You will not be safe here," Lorenzo said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "But you will learn. You will see things most people do not. And if you survive, perhaps you will grow stronger than even I expected." Camille felt a thrill run through her. The fear was real, but so was something else, a sense that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. You will teach me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I will watch you," he replied, his eyes dark and intense. "And perhaps, if you prove yourself, you will teach me something as well." The weight of his gaze was both terrifying and intoxicating. Camille had never felt anything like it, a mixture of fear, admiration, and a strange, undeniable pull toward the man who seemed both human and something beyond human. She knew in that moment that her life had shifted. The world she had known of small taverns, easy routines, and simple work was gone. Now she stood on the edge of a dangerous and magnificent world, one where courage, cunning, and heart could determine survival. And Lorenzo, he was no ordinary man. He was a storm. And she had just stepped into the eye of it. The first night ended with Camille standing in a high tower window, looking out over the city. The streets glimmered beneath the rain, dark and alive. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain: her life would never be the same. And somewhere deep in the shadows, Lorenzo watched her, a silent promise in his eyes that the game was only beginning. The morning sun barely reached the top of the city walls, leaving the streets below cloaked in a soft haze. Camille walked cautiously through the alleyways, following Lorenzo's silent instructions from the previous night. Her steps echoed against wet stones, a rhythm that matched the anxious beating of her heart. She was no longer just a waitress. She was now a part of a world that pulsed with danger, secrecy, and dark power. The building they entered was unlike any place she had seen before. Its grand doors, carved with strange, twisting patterns, seemed almost alive. Inside, the halls stretched endlessly, lined with heavy tapestries and flickering candles. Shadows seemed to move as if they had a will of their own, curling along the walls and vanishing around corners. "You will work here," Lorenzo said, his voice low and commanding. "Not just to serve, but to observe, to understand." Camille glanced at him, unsure whether his words were a warning or a test. "Observe? What do you mean?" she asked softly. "People reveal themselves in ways they do not expect," he replied, his dark eyes watching her closely. "Watch them, learn their strengths, their weaknesses. You must understand this place to survive." Camille nodded, absorbing his words. It was not just survival she was learning. It was the rules of a kingdom of shadows, where every action, every glance, and every word carried weight. She felt both fear and fascination. The day passed slowly. She moved between rooms, delivering messages, carrying small tasks, and quietly watching the people who moved through the halls. Some were servants, quiet and efficient. Others were bodyguards, their muscles tight and eyes alert. A few wore expressions that suggested knowledge of secrets far darker than Camille could imagine. Everywhere she went, Lorenzo's presence followed. Sometimes she felt him standing behind her, silently observing, his gaze heavy with unspoken thoughts. Other times he disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with her curiosity and anxiety. By midday, she found herself in the library, a vast room filled with books and scrolls that smelled of aged parchment. She ran her fingers along the spines, marveling at the sheer knowledge contained within these walls. A book about city politics fell open, revealing a map marked with symbols she could not yet understand. "You have an eye for detail," a voice said behind her. Camille turned sharply to see Lorenzo standing there, as silent and commanding as ever. "Most would ignore these markings, but you noticed." I just thought they looked important," Camille said, her cheeks warming. Lorenzo stepped closer, his shadow falling across the floor. "Important things are often hidden in plain sight. You have a gift, Camille, a way of seeing things others do not. Do not waste it." She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. To hear him speak so personally, to acknowledge her in a way no one else had, made her pulse quicken. Yet fear remained, fear of the man, of the world he ruled, and of the unknown dangers that seemed to lurk in every corner. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the city in gold and shadow, Lorenzo led her to the inner courtyard. The garden was a strange mix of beauty and menace. Twisted trees, silver flowers that seemed to glow faintly, and fountains carved with creatures that appeared to whisper secrets when the wind passed over them. "This is where I test loyalty," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not with weapons, but with courage and judgment. A moment of hesitation can be fatal here." Camille felt a shiver run down her spine. She was beginning to understand that life in Lorenzo's world was not measured in days or hours, but in moments of choice, in the decisions that could alter fate. "You will meet others soon," he continued, his eyes dark and unreadable. "People who will challenge you, who will try to break you. Some may even try to use you. Do not falter, do not doubt yourself." She nodded, swallowing her fear. "I will do my best." "Good," he said. "That is all I ask for now. The rest will come in time." As the night deepened, Camille returned to the quarters assigned to her, a small room at the top of the estate. From the window, she could see the city lights twinkling like scattered stars. Yet even as she admired the view, She felt the weight of the new life pressing down on her. Every decision, every action could have consequences she had not yet imagined. It was then that she heard whispers, faint, almost inaudible. The shadows themselves seemed to speak, carrying secrets of power, betrayal, and danger. Camille pressed her hand to her chest, her heart racing. She realized this was no ordinary household. There were forces here, hidden and alive, that were watching, testing, and waiting. The next morning, Lorenzo summoned her again. This time, the task was more direct. She was to deliver messages to allies and rivals alike, messages that required careful words and steady courage. Camille understood immediately that any mistake could have serious consequences. On her way, she encountered a man with a scar across his face, one of Lorenzo's closest enforcers. He studied her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "You are new," he said. "Not many last more than a week in this place." "I intend to last," Camille replied, her voice calm despite the tension curling in her stomach. The man nodded slightly as if impressed. "Confidence is rare. Don't waste it." The message delivery was nerve-wracking. Each recipient seemed to carry an invisible weight, their eyes sharp, their smiles thin. Camille spoke carefully, observing reactions, noting details in a way she had never done before. By the time she returned, she was exhausted, yet also strangely exhilarated. She was beginning to see the threads of power that wove through this shadowed world. When she returned, Lorenzo was waiting. He did not smile, but his eyes held a quiet acknowledgement. "You handled that well," he said, "better than I expected." Camille felt a rush of pride but quickly pushed it aside. "Thank you," she said softly. "Do not thank me," he replied. "Learn from this. Observation, courage, and clarity, these are more important than gratitude." As days passed, Camille began to understand the subtle hierarchies in Lorenzo's world. Some servants were loyal, some were deceitful. Some enforcers were honorable, others were dangerous and unpredictable. And through it all, Lorenzo remained an enigma, a man of immense power. Yet with moments of vulnerability he revealed only in fleeting glances or quiet words. One evening, as she was tending to a small task in the courtyard, she noticed a strange artifact hidden beneath a fountain. It was carved from dark stone, etched with symbols that seemed to shift in the candlelight. As her fingers brushed its surface, a cold sensation traveled up her arm, and for a moment the world seemed to shiver. "You found it," a voice said behind her. Camille spun to see Lorenzo standing there, his expression unreadable. "Be careful. That artifact carries more than history. It carries power, dangerous power. It is tied to me, to this house, and to a curse that has haunted my family for generations." Camille's eyes widened. "A curse?" she whispered. "Yes," he said quietly. "A shadow that lingers, waiting for the unwise. You must be careful, Camille. Curiosity is a gift, but it can also be dangerous." The weight of his words pressed upon her. She realized that her presence in this world was no longer casual. She had stepped into a web of power, superstition, and darkness, and every choice she made could shape the future in ways she could not yet see. That night, she could not sleep. The shadows in her room seemed deeper, more alive, and she found herself thinking constantly of Lorenzo. His eyes, his voice, the strange mixture of danger and fascination he inspired, it all consumed her thoughts. She did not understand why she felt drawn to him, why fear and attraction coexisted in the same heartbeat, but she could not deny it. The next morning, Lorenzo summoned her again. "I have work for you," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "You will observe the servants during the evening gathering. Watch, listen, and understand. There are whispers in this house, secrets that may be useful or deadly." Camille nodded, swallowing her nervousness. She understood that this was a test of more than skill. It was a test of courage, perception, and resilience. The evening gathering was both fascinating and terrifying. Noblemen and enforcers mingled, their conversations filled with half-truths and subtle threats. Camille moved quietly among them, her eyes sharp, her mind absorbing everything. She noticed rivalries, secret gestures, and hidden alliances. Every detail seemed crucial, every glance a possible warning. Lorenzo watched her from a distance, his gaze intense and unreadable. He did not intervene, but Camille felt the weight of his scrutiny, a silent measure of her progress. For the first time, she understood the depth of his world. That power was not just about force, but about knowledge, perception, and timing. As the gathering ended, a sudden scream pierced the air. One of the guests had discovered the missing artifact, the same one Camille had touched in the courtyard. Panic spread, and accusations flew. Camille felt a chill of fear. The shadow of the curse seemed to grow, pressing against the edges of reality. Lorenzo moved quickly, his presence cutting through the chaos. He recovered the artifact, his expression dark and fierce. Camille felt a surge of both fear and admiration. He was terrifying, and yet there was something almost human in the way he acted, a desire to protect what mattered to him. After the guests had left, Lorenzo approached Camille. "You are learning," he said quietly. "The world you see is only part of the truth. There are deeper shadows, darker dangers, and hidden forces. But you are beginning to understand." Camille nodded, her heart racing. She realized that she was no longer the same girl who had walked into the tavern days ago. She had stepped into a world of power, shadow, and mystery, and she was starting to navigate it with courage and insight. Lorenzo's eyes lingered on her, a mixture of curiosity and something unspoken. "One day," he said softly, "you may see more than even I do. But for now, be careful, Camille. The shadows are patient and they wait for mistakes." Camille shivered, both from fear and anticipation. She did not yet understand the full scope of Lorenzo's world, nor the curse that haunted it. But one thing was clear. Her life had changed forever, and the man who had first called her gorgeous had become a force she could not ignore. And somewhere deep in the heart of the estate, the shadows watched, waiting for the next move. The estate was quiet, but the quiet was false. Camille had learned that silence here was never empty. It was filled with secrets, with the invisible hum of power and danger. Even the air seemed heavier, as if holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. She walked along the corridors, her steps soft against the polished stone floors. The shadows stretched long from the flickering candles, dancing in ways that made her heart skip. Tonight, Lorenzo had not appeared to summon her. That made her uneasy. The morning had started like any other. Camille had completed her tasks with careful precision, delivering messages, observing the household staff, and memorizing the hidden details that most people overlooked. But there was an unspoken tension in the air, a feeling that something dangerous was stirring. By mid-afternoon, the sensation became undeniable. The estate seemed to shift around her, the shadows thicker, the flickering lights casting strange shapes on the walls. Camille felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the artifact she had touched in the courtyard days before. Could its power be stirring again? A sudden noise drew her attention. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper echoed through the hall. Camille froze. The whisper seemed to come from everywhere at once, moving along the walls like a living thing. "Camille," the voice murmured. It was not human, not entirely. It carried a weight, a sorrow, and a warning all at once. She took a cautious step forward. "Who's there?" she asked, though she doubted the sound would answer. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in black, his face hidden in darkness. Camille's breath caught. The air itself seemed to recognize him, trembling slightly at his presence. She had never seen this man before, yet something in her gut told her he was dangerous. "You should not be here," the figure said, his voice like gravel and silk. "This place is not safe for the living." Camille's hands clenched instinctively. I'm allowed," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I work here." The figure stepped closer, and Camille realized that it was not just a man, it was something more, something tied to the shadows themselves. "You are brave," he said almost softly. "But bravery alone will not protect you from the curse that walks these halls. It waits, and it feeds." Camille felt a shiver run through her. She understood in that moment what Lorenzo had meant when he warned her about hidden dangers, about shadows waiting for mistakes. She had seen glimpses of it before, but now it felt alive, almost aware of her presence. Before she could respond, the figure vanished into the darkness, leaving only the echo of his words. Camille's heart pounded. She felt fear, yes, but also a strange thrill, a sense that she was standing on the edge of something greater than herself, something that could change her forever. Lorenz appeared suddenly from the opposite end of the corridor, silent as a shadow. "You felt it, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low and unreadable. Camille nodded, unable to find words. "Yes, something powerful." He stepped closer, his eyes dark and intense. "That is the curse," he said. "It has haunted my family for generations. It is tied to this house, to the bloodline, and to me." She swallowed, her pulse quickening. "A curse? How dangerous is it?" "It is patient," he said, "and it is relentless. One wrong move, one moment of weakness, and it can consume everything. It preys on desire, on fear, on ambition. It will not stop." Camille felt a chill. She had thought her days were filled with challenges before, but this was something beyond anything she had imagined. And yet, even in the face of fear, she felt a flicker of determination. She would not run, not from this, not from him. The evening came, and with it, the estate felt alive in ways she could not explain. The shadows seemed deeper, twisting along the walls, stretching into shapes that almost resembled human forms. Camille moved carefully, her senses alert. Every sound, every movement seemed amplified. Lorenzo appeared again, his presence sudden and commanding. "You must understand," he said, "that the curse is not only a threat, it is also a test. Those who can face it, who can endure it, may find power, but those who falter are lost." Camille nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "And you have endured it?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly, a shadow of emotion crossing his dark features. "I have survived, yes. But not without cost. There are parts of me that the curse has claimed, parts that I hide even from myself." Her eyes softened. She began to see him not just as a man of power, but as someone shaped and scarred by forces beyond human understanding. The magnetism she felt for him grew, mingled with fear and admiration. She realized that Lorenzo was not merely dangerous, he was broken in ways she could not yet fully comprehend. Suddenly, a scream pierced the halls. Camille's heart leapt into her throat. She ran toward the sound, finding one of the staff cornered by a figure cloaked in shadow, its movements swift and unnatural. The figure struck with speed that defied human ability. Camille froze for a heartbeat, then remembered Lorenzo's teachings. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was action in the face of it. She grabbed a nearby lantern and swung it, the flame casting long, flickering shadows. The figure recoiled, distracted, and the staff member escaped. Lorenzo appeared behind her, silent and commanding. "Well done," he said, his voice almost approving. "You are learning quickly." Camille turned to face him, breathless. It was not easy." "No," he admitted. "It never is, but you survived. That matters more than anything else here." The night deepened, and the estate settled into a tense quiet. Camille could not sleep. Her mind replayed the events again and again. The shadowy figure, the whispered warnings, Lorenzo's gaze, the thrill and fear of being tested. She realized that she was changing, slowly but surely. She was becoming part of a world that demanded courage, perception, and heart. The next day brought more challenges. Camille was assigned to observe a meeting between Lorenzo and several influential figures from the city. She watched carefully, noting gestures, hidden glances, and subtle words that carried more meaning than the surface conversation. She saw rivalries, alliances, and threats that were unspoken but understood by all present. Every detail mattered, every movement could signal power or weakness. Camille's mind raced as she absorbed it all. Lorenz watched her from across the room, his eyes dark and calculating. For a moment, he allowed himself to be vulnerable, showing a hint of pride. Camille noticed, and her heart stirred with a mix of admiration and longing. After the meeting, Lorenzo approached her. "You did well," he said. "Most would have missed half of what you observed. You are not like most people, Camille. You have a gift." Her chest tightened with a mixture of pride and nervousness. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me," he said, his voice low and serious. "Learn from it, use it. The curse does not forgive ignorance." Camille understood that he was not merely giving praise. He was giving guidance, warning her, preparing her for the dangers ahead. She felt a strange connection to him, an unspoken bond forged in shared fear, respect, and something deeper she did not yet understand. That night she wandered the estate alone, drawn toward the courtyard where the artifact lay hidden beneath the fountain. She could feel its energy, subtle but persistent, calling to her. She reached out, and the cold sensation ran up her arm again, sharper this time. "You feel it, don't you?" a voice whispered, soft and almost gentle. Camille turned to see Lorenzo standing at the edge of the courtyard watching her. "Yes," she said softly, it wants something. It wants more than you can imagine," he said, "and it will test you always. But you have a strength that many do not. That is why you are here." Camille looked at him, her heart racing. "Why me?" He stepped closer, the shadows curling around him like smoke. "Because you are not afraid of seeing what others cannot. You face the world as it is, not as it should be. That is rare, and in this place rare is valuable." The night stretched on, and they stood together in silence, two figures against the darkness, connected by something neither fully understood. Camille realized that the fear, the fascination, the thrill she felt for Lorenz was no longer simple curiosity. It was something deeper, something that could not be named, not yet, but that would shape the days to come. As the first light of dawn touched the edges of the estate, Camille knew that her life had changed forever. The curse, the shadows, the dangers of this world, they were real and they were coming for her. But she also knew that she was no longer the same girl who had entered the tavern weeks before. She was stronger, braver, and somehow connected to the man who had called her gorgeous in a world that often misunderstood her. And somewhere deep within the estate, the shadows waited, patient and relentless, for the next move in a game that was far from over. The night was alive with tension. A cold wind swept through the city streets, carrying whispers of danger and secrets that had long been buried. Camille stood at the edge of the estate's courtyard, her heart racing. Tonight would be different. She could feel it in the air, a gathering of forces beyond her understanding, and a test that would demand every ounce of courage she possessed. The shadows that had haunted the halls for days seemed thicker now, curling around the estate like living things. She tightened her hands around the lantern she carried, its flickering flame casting dancing light across the cobblestones. The artifact beneath the fountain pulsed faintly, a subtle energy that hummed through the air, reminding her that the curse was never far from reach. Lorenz appeared silently at her side, his dark eyes scanning the courtyard and beyond. "They have come," he said, his voice low and steady. "The ones who seek to claim what is not theirs, and the curse, it will not forgive weakness." Camille nodded, swallowing her fear. "I am ready," she said, though her voice betrayed the slightest tremor. "You must be more than ready," he replied. "You must be vigilant. Courage alone is not enough tonight. You will need clarity, instinct, and trust in yourself and in me." Her pulse quickened. Trust was a strange word in this world of shadows and danger, yet she felt its weight in his presence. It was not blind faith, but something deeper, a recognition that they were both tied to forces greater than themselves. The first signs of trouble arrived as a ripple in the shadows. Figures emerged from the mist, cloaked in darkness, their eyes glinting with intent. Camille recognized some from the city streets, rival factions that had long sought to challenge Lorenzo's authority. Others were unknown, strange shapes that moved with unnatural grace. Lorenzo moved first, stepping forward with a calm precision that belied the danger. He spoke, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Leave this place or face the consequences of your greed and ambition." The figures did not move. Instead, they advanced, their intent clear. Camille felt a surge of fear but remembered his words, clarity and instinct. She raised the lantern, casting its light toward the shadows. The figures recoiled slightly, revealing their forms more clearly. Men and women trained in stealth and combat, some with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark, tied perhaps to the curse or other supernatural forces. As they attacked, Camille and Lorenzo moved as one. She dodged, shifted, and followed his silent cues, her mind alert to every movement. He did not touch her, yet his presence guided her, a silent rhythm that told her when to move, when to pause, when to strike with observation rather than force. In the chaos, Camille realized something profound. The curse had not only threatened them, it had prepared them. Each challenge, each shadow she had faced in the halls and corridors had trained her for this moment. Her heart raced, but her mind was sharp. She anticipated attacks, noticed weaknesses, and moved with a courage she had not known she possessed. Lorenzo, meanwhile, was a force of calm and precision. His every movement was controlled, his dark eyes assessing, predicting, and striking when necessary. Yet in the midst of battle, she saw glimpses of something more vulnerable, a man burdened by power, haunted by his past, yet willing to risk everything to protect what mattered. The fight reached its climax near the fountain. The artifact glowed brighter, its power feeding the chaos around them. Camille realized that it was not merely an object of danger, it was a key to breaking the curse that had haunted Lorenzo's family for generations. "You must touch it," Lorenzo said urgently, his hand brushing hers as they reached the fountain together. "Only together can we end this." Fear and anticipation surged through her. The cold energy of the artifact bit at her skin, but she steeled herself, placing her hands alongside his. A shock of energy passed between them, bright and intense, and the shadows screamed as if in anger. The artifact pulsed, then shattered in a burst of light that filled the courtyard. The figures attacking them faltered, their forms unraveling into mist and shadow. Camille and Lorenzo were thrown back slightly, the air crackling with the residue of power. When the light faded, silence descended. The courtyard was empty save for the two of them. The curse was broken, or at least subdued. The artifact lay in fragments harmless, its energy dispersed into the night. Camille looked at Lorenzo, her chest heaving. "It's over," she asked, though even as she spoke, she felt the weight of what had just occurred. "For now," he said, his voice soft, almost human. He stepped closer, the shadows of his past still clinging to him, but less heavy than before. "The curse has taken much, but tonight we reclaimed it." She felt a surge of relief and awe. They had faced the darkness together, survived, and emerged stronger. But it was more than survival. Something deeper had shifted between them. The danger, the fear, and the shared courage had forged a bond that neither could ignore. Lorenzo's eyes, dark and intense, met hers. "You were remarkable tonight," he said quietly. "Brave, clever, alive in a way that defies the shadows." Camille felt her heart ache with a mixture of fear and longing. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. He shook his head slightly. "No, you could have. I only guided you. You have strength I have not seen in a long time. Perhaps that is why you are here." The air between them was charged, heavy with unspoken emotion. For the first time, Camille saw beyond the darkness that had surrounded Lorenzo. She saw the man beneath, the burdened, powerful, yet deeply human figure who had drawn her into this world and tested her in ways she had never imagined. Camille began, but words failed her. Fear, admiration, and something more profound swirled in her chest. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet comforting. "Do not fear what you feel," he said softly. "Fear is natural, but trust in what you have learned and in yourself. You are part of this world now and part of mine." The dawn began to break, casting pale light over the courtyard. The shadows receded, retreating to corners and walls, leaving the estate bathed in soft golden light. Camille felt a strange peace, tempered by the knowledge that the world beyond the estate remained dangerous. Yet in that moment she realized something important. Fear had not controlled her. The curse had not defeated her. And Lorenzo had not only guided her but had shown her the power of trust, courage, and heart. They walked together to the edge of the courtyard, silent, the ruins of the artifact at their feet. Camille's mind was full of questions: what the curse had been, why it had targeted Lorenzo's family, and what other dangers might lie ahead. But she also knew that she would face them differently now. She would face them with strength, with awareness, and with him by her side. Lorenzo finally spoke, breaking the silence. "The world will not forgive weakness," he said. "But tonight we proved that strength, courage, and trust can overcome even the darkest forces." Camille looked up at him, her heart full. We did it together," she said softly. "Yes," he replied, his voice low and deliberate. "Together." The weight of his hand on hers, the intensity of his gaze, and the quiet acknowledgement of shared triumph filled the space between them. In the aftermath of danger and shadows, they had found something rare and precious, a bond forged in courage, trust, and understanding. The city beyond the walls continued its restless life, unaware of the battles fought in the quiet of the estate. But Camille and Lorenzo knew the truth. Power, darkness, and danger would always exist. Yet they also knew that together, they could face whatever came next. The shadows that had once threatened the estate now seemed subdued, as if recognizing a new balance. Camille felt the weight of the past lift slightly, replaced by the promise of a future shaped by courage, trust, and shared purpose. She looked at Lorenzo one last time that morning. I feel like I understand now," she said. "Not everything, but enough to know that we can face it all." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Yes, and the world will continue to challenge us, but we will endure. We will rise." As the first rays of sunlight lit the estate, Camille felt a deep sense of transformation. She was no longer the timid girl who had entered the tavern weeks before. She was a woman of courage, insight, and strength, tested by shadows and forged in the fires of danger. And Lorenzo, he was no longer just the enigmatic, powerful man of darkness. He was someone changed by trust, connection, and the bond they had forged together. In the quiet aftermath, they stood side by side, two figures against the light, shadows still at their backs but no longer threatening. The world was still dangerous, the city still alive with secrets, but for the first time, Camille felt a deep and undeniable certainty. Together, they could face whatever came next. The estate was calm. The curse had been broken. And in that calm, in that fragile peace, something more profound had taken root: hope, trust, and a bond that would endure beyond shadows and time. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow moved silently, watching. But Camille and Lorenzo no longer feared the dark. They had faced it together, and they had emerged stronger than ever. And in that emergence, a new story began, one of courage, connection, and a bond forged in the very heart of shadows.